everybody, welcome to my homestead and welcome to my channel. In this video, I'm talking to Joe Signs. He's the one that donated my microphone. I'm very appreciative of that. And we're going to talk about a few different things. He's done some projects for the church. He's in filmmaking. He also has his own service that he does called Bottlesodes TV. I've brought it up a few times on the channel. I'm going to put the link for it below, but it's basically a streaming service for children to get them away from just like the type of content that there is now and get them to be a little bit less attached to the TV and do things in real life. It like fosters that kind of idea. So make sure to check that out. But he had commented on one of my videos because we were talking about in that video, the correlation process. In the time that I've done this YouTube channel, I rely heavily on church material. And I feel that, you should do that because anything that you're trying to research, you should go down to its root source, to some authoritative source. And I've always felt that church material is authoritative. But occasionally there would be people who'd be like, no, I'd like quote things from like the Ensign, and people would be like, well, no, because this was written by blah, 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 blah. And I've always been like, well, at the very least, I'm pretty sure the prophets and apostles read the Ensign. So if there's something in there that's like wrong, it probably wouldn't fly. And through the process of time, I learned that there's a correlation committee. M. Russell Ballard has talked about the importance of correlation, and Joe, in his projects with the church, has encountered the correlation process. So just to start off, Joe, can you tell us a little bit about that from your firsthand experience?
Yeah. So I started working at the church full-time in 2009. And for 5 years, I was there full-time. And correlation, if I could correlate it to anything, let's see.
See what you did there?
Maybe the refiner's fire. Really anything that the church publishes, whenever the church has placed the logo on that piece of a material or on the video, it has to go through a correlation process. And that is a group of people that really comb through everything and make sure that it is in correlation with the doctrine and with the current handbook and everything. So even to the point of like, I wrote, when they were called Mormon messages, I was on the Mormon message team. And so it was a few of us that would either write, direct, shoot, or everything. Or anyway, we got to the point where it was difficult because, it was difficult to get approved somebody wearing jeans. So like, it's that they scrutinize everything. Me having a beard, they've come a long way where they allow beards on screen. Before they wouldn't. So, to say that they could accidentally put something published, I don't know. I don't know if there would be an accident. They even, if you look at some of the talks, I don't want to bring anything up controversial, but they're at least at a conference talk, and an apostle, I think, maybe misspoke and they changed the words or something in the actual publication of the general conference talk. So yeah. Anyway, I don't know if you want to.
They're very careful with it. Obviously with general conference itself, even though you have the authorities there, they all go through. Yeah. I don't know if it's like the same thing, but they go through some kind of review before the talk is approved. Yeah.
It's not like correlation says no to the apostles. It doesn't work that way. Yeah. But they're very much involved with the apostles at clearing everything, if that makes sense. I don't want anybody to come away with the feeling of, oh, well, they're telling what the apostles, them what to do.
Yeah. I do know M. Russell Ballard, he was involved with that committee for some time, and it gave him new perspective on the importance of church correlation. And he was talking about how in like Sunday school or elders quorum, he preferred that people stuck to the manual, and then if they felt the need to go outside the manual, instead of going to like other sources that are not from the church, like stick to church publications because it's gone through that review and it would be doctrinally sound. So you talked about how you just some of your jobs. So you've done what was it again? The Mormon, what are they called?
Yeah, Mormon messages.
Yeah, Mormon
so
messages.
there's
Yeah.
some popular ones called like Refiner's Fire. Do you remember that one? It's
Possibly if I saw it.
it's this blacksmith that's pounding on some hot metal and it's bending things, but this is a story of this lady. It's a true story. And she went through this process of her husband and her daughters went through cancer and died. And son, like just her whole family basically died all around really close to the same time. So anyway, that message, I directed that one, and Wrong Roads. There was sorry, I've got a gnat. Elder Holland told a story about him and his son went to the Grand Canyon or close to it, and they got lost. Kind of, they prayed which road. It's called Wrong Roads, and they anyway. So a lot of these messages that I worked on, pretty much a lot of the media that the church put out, some that I can talk about and some that I can't, but a lot of the media that the church put out, I was heavily involved in.
That's an amazing opportunity. And by the way, that one that you were just talking about with Elder Holland, that's one of my wife's favorite stories, because isn't that the one where they end up going down the wrong road after praying, but then they realize that the Lord wanted them to go down that wrong road temporarily so that they could absolutely be certain that it was the wrong road.
Yeah.
And go down the right road and not have any doubts that they were on the right.
Because the right road was very long. And so they would have doubted halfway through and turned her back to go on the other road. If they hadn't gone down it, they would have doubted and gone back to that other one and then been even more lost. So, and that, just fun fact, that truck in that video is the actual truck that they got lost in.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Like there's a cool story. Like we were going to film down, we were trying to find close to where they got lost. And we emailed the ward or stake saying, hey, we're looking for a truck because we're going to depict the story of Elder Holland where he's from there. And somebody chimed in and was like, hey, I have that truck. And so we used it in the filming of it. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, really
now,
cool.
do you do a lot of travel? Because like I failed to mention this. Joe is from Iowa, right? Aren't you near? Are you near Des Moines?
It's Ames, which is 30 miles north of Des Moines.
Okay. So he's a Midwest Saint. So, but you do a lot of travel, obviously, for these different projects.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So I used to live in Utah. I'm from here. Then I moved. My wife and I moved to Utah. I was working for the church full time, and we had a pretty significant answer to move back. And then a lot of can I tell this story?
Whatever you want. Because
this is we were. I was really busy for the church working, traveling all the time. It was kind of hard on us, actually. So we were reading, and we kind of started the Book of Mormon over again. And we had 2 toddlers at the time. And we were reading the Book of Mormon. We started over, but we were down to pretty much we could only read 1 verse a day because it was just, we were so overloaded with so many things. And so, but that 1 verse, there were answers, and it was Lehi's journey. And we felt really strongly that for some reason that we needed to go back to Iowa. And while we were doing that, that meant me leaving my full-time job. I was a full-time employee of the church. And we were called crazy. Because we started to make plans to do that, and we were leaving, and I had coworkers that were saying, you have the most secure job in the world because it's for the church and it'll last through the millennium or whatever. Anyway, So like, but it's like, and it's a coveted job, by other people in my industry that are saints would love to have that job that I had.
Yeah.
And
And the church offers, it's one of the few places that you can go that where an employer offers a pension.
yeah,
Right. Because that's
yeah,
my dad worked for the church, and that was like one of the big things, is that he had a pension.
yeah.
So yeah, so
So
many benefits.
it was a big deal to leave. And anyway, we did it, and I kid you not, though, it was a year later and my whole department was laid off.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So not that anybody else did anything wrong by not leaving or whatever, but I was so grateful because I did not want to stay there in Utah in my industry. Because I had freelanced on a bunch of things on TV shows and stuff, and working with LA crews is not really appealing to me. So, anyway, point is we had kind of a jump start on the future of what my career would be. But the cool thing is that I still contract for the church. So, President Nelson's message that he did in, it was the fifth proclamation that he read in the Sacred Grove.
Yeah.
It was yeah. So I worked on that. I was the second unit director on that one. And I flew the drone shot, opening that video. That was my shot. So like, I still contract for the church. I go and work for them, but I don't have to be there, which is fantastic. I don't have to be in the church office building, which is another subject, by the way.
Wow. So many amazing experiences. Like and it's great to be privy to some of those things. I know that when you get close, further in, like there's things that you can't talk about, but there are things that you can talk about. Like, what are some of the different experiences you've had that you can talk about that you'd like to share?
The coolest thing that I saw a lot was what the church does around the world and doesn't really say. So, for example, I think I can tell this story. I don't see why I couldn't. So, in Guatemala, it's a very humbling, beautiful story. So, in Guatemala, the church basically approached the government. Sorry, let me back up. Guatemala was having an issue of it was difficult for them for the citizens to get their work permits in order to go and work. And it took them like a year and a half to filing paperwork and finding records and all these things. And so what the church did was said, hey, we will help you digitize all your records, because they weren't digitized. And in that process, it will help you, the government and the economy there, to help citizens get their work permits quicker. And then the church gets to then use the names that they, digitize and put them in, the records, so that we can, go to the temple with them and all that stuff. Mm-hmm. So, the cool thing is that, so we were there filming all of this happening, all these lines, rows and rows and rows of computers, and all these people working, digitizing. And then what happened was that, so we were filming basically there was this dignitary there, I think that's the right word, but maybe like a governor or something like that, very high up there in Guatemala, and just expressing his gratitude for what the church has done to help digitize their records. And so that what happened was that they compressed it down from a year and a half down to people were getting their work permits in 4 hours. So it changes their economy, just by digitizing their records. And so like, that's the stuff, like they don't, the church doesn't announce that, but they do that stuff. And it's changing the economy all around the world, like doing stuff like that. It's just amazing.
It makes you wonder what other things
are
there if you had like the entire big picture.
Yeah.
Just how much influence, because like one thing is I've wondered, part of the prophet's task or responsibilities is to warn the world. And we know that he does it through general conference and through publications and proclamations and stuff like that. But sometimes I wonder what kind of conversations he may have had with other world leaders that maybe, was kind of like off the books. So that other things that the church is doing, like I would never have known that. I mean, that's like really significant. And even though it's a smaller country, like I'm sure that was like quite the undertaking to do get all those digitized.
It was huge. I mean, there were hundreds of computers in this giant room and just tons and tons of people employed digitizing these records. There wasn't like members of the church, doing it as a calling. It was just, it was employment for people doing that, but the church facilitated all that. And so it was just a really amazing, it's like, I want to know everything that they're doing because it's so cool how it really does. It changes their economy. It changes the lives of the members too, them to be able to get work and faster. And so it kind of just raises it to a higher standard of living and getting everybody out of poverty just by digitizing records. It's cool.
Yeah, it is so cool. And it makes me think about how doing these type of things will really show the nations of the world the character of the church, both before the millennium and after the millennium, because there's going to be some kind of transition. And world leaders, whoever moves on into the millennium, many of them will know that the church is a good organization and can be trusted. And I don't know, I just think that it's just all good.
Yeah. It's not to say there wasn't anything bad. And so this is why this can transition maybe a little bit to, not that I'm not going to be negative, but some people question, like say, oh, you work for the church full time. Are you still a member? That's the kind of the typical question I get actually a lot. And or it's like, how's your testimony? You worked for the church. Now, how's your testimony? And it's interesting because it's like, well, it's actually stronger because yes, if your testimony is based on other people's actions, then yeah, it'll rock your testimony. But if your testimony is based on the Savior and you love him and that this church is everybody that's in the church is imperfect. So then if you see it that way, then it's totally fine. And you actually see the miracles more because of the weaknesses of men.
Yeah.
And, so there's, I don't know if you've heard the saying probably, but like, if the church wasn't true, then the 19-year-old missionaries would have messed it up years ago.
Yeah.
Well, my saying is, if the church wasn't true, the middle managers would have messed it up a long time ago. Not to be negative, but it is a very interesting experience. I mean, even people commenting on how wide your tie is working. I just laugh, but other people get it like, oh, this is the way it should be. And then they get mad and leave or whatever. But yeah. I think it's more funny, but
yeah, any part of this church, you can scale up, you can scale down, you can look at the ward level. You're never going to have a perfect Relief Society president or bishop. Everyone is human, and that goes all the way up to the prophet himself. And, obviously he makes mistakes. Everybody makes mistakes. And like you said,
it's supposed to be like that.
Yeah.
Like we're supposed to be like kind of messing up. This is us learning. We're toddlers learning, as opposed to, no, you're supposed to be perfect, toddler. You should know all these things. It's like, no, we're messing up, but the Lord is leading the way.
Yeah. And it's amazing. It's amazing. There's a lot of influence from the Lord. It'd be nice if we could like graph that out and see how many times and in what ways he's like corrected things, just to go against the human nature that's tending to mess up things. But one thing that impresses me is the idea of the power of councils, because the church put out a 20-minute video documentary thing like that about that on YouTube, and it talks about the fact that they all come to a consensus, a unanimous decision when they're like trying to decide something through councils, and like the prophet never like does anything outside of that process, really. So
Yeah.
It's really cool.
And to follow up with that, what's interesting is my opinion has, as far as building Zion in Missouri, um, my opinion be based on working there in Salt Lake is that it will be necessary to build in Missouri, and that is the sifting part, if that makes sense.
I think
So meaning, and I think I've heard you talk about it, as far as having headquarters there, even like, when Christ returns. And I can see the necessity for a new location because it might be overrun with some, um, not that the church is overrun, but it's almost impossible for a Jerusalem-like place to be in Utah forever, because of the amount of stuff that's there. I mean, I was just there last week driving down I-15, and there's plastic surgery and all these things on the billboards that you're just like, yeah, we got to build a new place. But like, even within the church, I think it would be a good thing to have it, rebuilt so that it's from the ground up, in a different location, because there are people that kind of get it, let it go to their heads and become, whatever the word is, misusing what they think it is. I mean, there's people that work at the church that they take it as a calling, and yet they're getting paid. And so it gets kind of conflated of what they should be doing and shouldn't be doing. And it's, so I can see how building a new place somewhere else would help a lot.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I know what you're saying. I know what you're saying. I have so much to say about that, actually. For one thing, your experience is not unique as far as the call to come to this part of the country, whether it's Missouri or Iowa or Nebraska or Kansas. I've heard a lot of people contacting me saying that they've had like this pull to come to this part of the country. Okay. Secondly, I've talked a lot about how when you have a population that's mostly members of the church, whether it's in the Old Testament in Israel or whether it's modern day, when you have a high concentration of members and it's very homogenous, it becomes, there's a cultural aspect that starts to kind of rise out of that. And some people may look like members of the church, but they're just kind of born into it, and maybe their heart isn't really into it. They do it for cultural purposes. Secondly, we know it's been said that Salt Lake would be one of the wicked cities of the world, and I've personally witnessed it. There's a lot of really bad things that happen there. Almost like because you have like the headquarters of the church, but you also have like really strong forces acting against that, especially within the Salt Lake Valley.
Well, it makes sense because it's kind of like, a third of the host of heaven left, and where would they concentrate? Well, wherever the saints would be, especially.
Yeah, you always you go for the capital. In any war, you try to get the capital.
Yeah.
So, I have to wonder, putting it all together, and I'm not passing judgment on people that stay in Utah or stay in Vegas or Phoenix or places like that, but I have to wonder if some are being brought here because of what you said. It's like there has to be kind of like a refreshing, a new start for whenever that takes place.
Maybe kind of like it's early adopters or something.
Early adopters.
Because there has to be people, like populating the temples there, because they're still building temples there like crazy. So there's amazing, very righteous people there, and they're called to do that there. But some people may be called, to kind of go somewhere else in order to start, planting.
Yeah, to start afresh, to a revitalization. You could also look at it in the sense of Israel wandering in the wilderness for 40 years. You had those that were from the previous generation that died off, that were not permitted to go into the promised land. And I'm not necessarily equating that with this, but something like that. So I think I understand what you're saying. Yeah. I feel like me just observing Utah in my lifetime, because I was born there, grew up there, only left in my late 20s. But I've like kept an eye on it, and it feels just like over time it's kind of gotten worse and worse and more kind of like materialistic, more conforming to the ways of like California, really. I know that there's a lot of people that I've known in my life that have just really admired California culture. And when I say California, I just really mean like worldliness and wanting to be like that. And so yeah, so I don't know. I guess we'll just see what happens. But so what are some other things that you've worked on, or other experiences you've had, or unique insights that you might have?
Well, I was just on a shoot, and I was talking to somebody from the temple department, and it was it was really cool to ask questions. And I wanted to know if that rumor was true about how the church is making temples more modular, so that you can put them in a shipping container and ship them over and build them really quick. And I've heard that from a number of people, but never directly from somebody. And anyway, so this time I did ask that question, and he said, yeah, that's totally true. And I was like, how much time is that taking off construction? And he said 2 years. 2 years. That's just like, that's exciting. It gives me chills, because it's like, oh, that's awesome. How many more that it makes it more possible? Like before we could think, because when President Hinckley introduced the mini temples, right, we were like, oh, that's exciting, because then it makes it so that more places can get them. And then now it's almost like another version of mini temples, where they can just build it up really quick. And so again, I've heard you talk a lot about like timeline and stuff. And, when people say, well, there still needs to be this and this. Well, yeah, if you think about that in the old way of constructing, or construction, it's just, but there are other ways now to build something really very quickly. So a temple could go up in Missouri very quickly, or, just any location that's significant, which all of them are, but, the signs of the times significant, like in Jerusalem or anything. And you just talked about it, but preparing the temple, this is on the Jewish side of them preparing everything. And then when it's time to build the temple, all that they just pretty much just fill it in with the stuff that they've already built or they've already made. And so it's way quicker than the 40-year Salt Lake temple.
It makes you wonder, because I've heard the same thing as you, this idea of the fabricated temples. I think that word is kind of starting to spread. And I've heard talk of like having temples in the thousands, because right now we only have it in the hundreds. We haven't gotten to 300 yet, right? Between constructed and announced. I can't remember.
I don't remember either.
It's within that range. It's between 200 and 300, but it would be interesting to see like what they had in mind is like just how we have our stake centers. What if like each stake had its own temple? They're prefabricated, they're small, and it's not something where it's just like it's open all the time, or even like whatever. Maybe like the stake would be like, okay, we're gonna have the temple, our stake temple ready for endowments on these days. Set up your appointments with the state clerk or something like that.
Yeah.
That would be crazy if they did something like that, or maybe like a few stakes share a temple or something like that.
Right. Yeah, no, it's very exciting. It's super exciting to be in these times.
Yeah.
Not
I can't,
always necessarily. You know how President Nelson says that we get front row seats. Well, sometimes I want like fifth row seats because the actors are coughing on me with COVID and they're going through my wallet and taking money out and stuff like that. Yeah.
yeah. Well, there's no sign of it, stopping. I don't
Yeah,
think.
that's
And
right.
every single general conference, you have to wonder what's going to happen this time, because I was blown away by this last one, the announcement of the 17 temples and where they were. Like, I was blown away by the the Barcelona temple announcement, not just because that's where I started my mission, but it's crazy that we have now another European country that's joined the two temple club.
Yeah,
So I got a question for you. So with your future, and I don't mean to get too personal,
that's fine.
you're going to keep going with the Bottlesodes TV. You're going to continue doing your work that you're doing now. Do you have any other projects in the work, or is there the chance you would ever do a YouTube channel? That'd probably be time consuming for what you do, but like, do you have anything in the works?
So, yes. So talking about Bottlesodes TV, I want to apologize to anybody that has signed up, because right now it's just a website, and we had an app, but when COVID hit, we partnered with an influencer, and that influencer decided to split and take a bunch of money, and they are getting a divorce, something like that. Anyway, and then I lost all my business. So like on my film production side, so we kind of hit a wall, and but we are trying to start back up again. And so actually we are in the process of looking for partners, so people that either investors or companies that have aligned visions, because basically this has been something that we know, my wife and I know that we are supposed to start, and it could be a YouTube channel for kids, but we made national news for even starting this because somebody got their video into YouTube Kids that showed kids how to commit suicide. And so I
Gosh.
contacted the reporter, and I said, hey, my wife and I are trying to solve that problem, and by making our own streaming service, so that, or content for children that is good and healthy, and it's curated only by my wife and I, and so that there's no possibility of somebody getting their stuff in there. And so we've been doing it for 5-6 years of just building, because making the content is just the biggest thing. So we're at the point now of where we can start to partner with somebody, but still we're not a tech company. And that's basically what we're starting, as a tech company, as opposed to just making content. So I've debated YouTube, but it's hard because we've become, people Google search alternatives to YouTube Kids, and we want to catch that audience. And especially now, even if I don't want to scare anybody, but if you're watching YouTube Kids, what YouTube thinks is safe for your kids,
Yeah. Yeah.
is not safe for your kids. So, and the other thing is that we are we're not overstimulating. We're not the typical cartoons that are just like overstimulating. It's actually just content that helps your child to want to go live in real life, to want to. So there's piano lessons on how to make balloon animals, just so many things that they would want to just turn off the screen and go do. And so that's actually been since the whole Lehi's journey, leaving Utah and coming here, that has been our calling, is to build content and a place for families and children where there's no agenda besides just clean, calm, wholesome content, and that helps families, helps build families. And that's what our mission is trying to build families, strong families, together. And again, we're not saying screens are terrible. It's just more of helping children learn how to use them appropriately, you know?
Yeah.
So that's what we have to do. I struggle with still of like, okay, I mean, I'm spending way too much time on my device or whatever. And so, how can we expect our children to do that? That's just crazy. So anyway, point is that is our mission. And then I am working on a project that it's a series that we might possibly be pitching it to BYU TV, but it's more for us grown-ups to watch, something narrative and pretty cool. But I don't want to give anything away right now. But I'll share it with you and all your listeners. And once we're at a certain point, and I think it's a pretty cool series, pretty fun to watch. And then basically that's it. I still, again, contract for the church, and then we're just trying to listen to what revelation that we need to, that we receive and act on.
Yeah. Well, this is exactly what they're talking about right now, receiving personal revelation. And it may not be everybody's called to come here to this part of the country, but for some it is. In your case, you were basically saved from getting laid off, and you were brought here, I think, for millennial purposes.
Mm-hmm.
And speaking of the millennium, I got a question for you. And I think that you may have commented on this before. How do you think the nature of film, entertainment, stuff like that will change as we get into the millennium? Because there may be a big need for you to fill in that gap, because Hollywood, not much of Hollywood is probably going to survive into the millennium.
This is a fantastic question. When I was at the church full time, people would say, hey, why doesn't the church do this? Why doesn't the church make the Book of Mormon, movies and, and stuff like that? Why doesn't the church I've had that question so many times. And I thought that too at the beginning, but I started to understand that it's not the church, that the headquarters of the church, that should be doing this. It's us members out in the world should be making it, and as opposed to us waiting for the church to do it, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And so actually, Bottlesodes TV, I was on that shoot with President Nelson, and also at the time it was Sister Joy. I'm so sorry. She was the general primary president just a couple of years ago. Joy Jones, Sister Jones, and I showed her Bottlesodes TV, and she said, because we were just in a room together, and we were, I was just pushed, inside. I was like, hey, there's Sister Jones. I should just go show her this. And so I did. And she said, the world needs this. And because she's visited all these different countries where there's parents that both have to work and go, and they're they want good content for their kids to watch in the house, because if they go outside, it's really dangerous. So she really did, but she's like, I feel so bad that we, meaning the church, can't make this stuff for members of the church everywhere. But she's like, that's why I'm so glad that you're doing it, because it's not in the wheelhouse for the church to do that. Mm-hmm. And that makes sense, because, and then, if think about The Chosen, or I love The Chosen, and some, it's part of me says, well, why couldn't the church make that? Well, there's a danger in making something so good. It becomes a distraction. And the church is focused on one thing, meaning there's three or four missions of the church, but it can be easily distracted. We can easily be distracted into something else that all of the sudden becomes Hollywood all over again. And the church, that the the ordinances in the temple and baptism, those are the things that the church is needed for, as opposed to entertaining everybody. And so that's kind of what I learned. And so I think, this is my personal opinion, and it's been backed up by a lot of people, but us members of the church going out into the world, not staying in Utah in the sense of just only filming Utah people. Like, I have a producer in Zimbabwe, I have a producer in the Philippines, and we're making series there of, for children.
Yeah.
And so, as opposed to just in Utah, does that make sense? So
Yeah.
I think it's us members going out into the world and then making content, whoever feels compelled, whoever's in this industry. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I think, so to go back to your question, with my goal with Bottlesodes TV or any of my content is to be able to, it will last into the millennium. Like, it would transition into the millennium.
Yeah.
And it's very tempting in my field for a lot of my friends. I have a lot of friends that have either left the church or they're still part of it, but yet they work on really terrible things, harder than our, and they justify it. They're like, well, I got to feed my family. And it just, that's fine. They're in that mentality. I'm not going to judge them, but at least for me and my family, we are going to sacrifice in order to make content that would be shown in heaven, if that makes sense. And I think the millennium is that way. And so that's a long answer to your question, but I'm very passionate about it because you're right. I mean, Hollywood is not going to stand. It's not going to last through. I mean, even look at Disney, it's starting to crumble. But there are so many people that go through the BYU program, like animation program, and like Pixar gets them, so there are good members with really good talent out there. And my call is for everybody to start creating your own stuff. And because that's the stuff that's going to transition into the millennium, because we're definitely going to have movies and all that stuff. People that are passionate about, making roller coasters. I think there's going to be roller coasters. There's so many different things that we will use our talents for, and especially storytelling. I mean, anyway, so I'm going too long.
No, you're good. There's a lot of things that are related to that. It's not good that we're compelled in all things, that we we do good things of our own will, consecrating our time and talents, and that could include making money. And I think that's one reason why the church, why they own Deseret Book and Siegel Book, because even though they can't really fill the role that you're playing or any of the other authors, filmmakers, whatever that you find in Deseret Book, they can like help and at least like provide a store, and I think it's great that there's so many people out there that can fill that store with good, wholesome things and give people an alternative to worldly things. So I think the church does want us to, and the Lord wants us to do these things. And like I've said on the channel recently, a lot of times it comes down to, if you don't do it, no one's going to do it.
That's right.
You've got to do it. You've got to find the things within you that no one else is going to be able to bring to the table, and then make it real. And I know that the Lord is more than happy to prosper you as you like work, you consult with him, and you can make things happen. And so who knows, maybe right now, me talking to you, what we're witnessing is the future millennial good Hollywood. Right. And as far as like stories go and entertainment, because obviously we're not going to have movies like we do now, but they still have to be interesting. There still has to be what is it in storytelling where it's like you have the three, what's it called? Acts within a movie, the formula where you have a problem and then there's the lead up and then the climax, because you still in stories, you have to portray problems. But I doubt that there's going to be very much violence in movies at that point. But how do you think that we're still going to be able to make good, entertaining movies without violence, without reference to drugs or like evil. Like, what do you think about that?
That's a great question. I was literally on a shoot this morning with my brother and a friend, and we had this exact conversation about the series that we are writing, and it involves some death, it involves survival and stuff like that. But if I death is part of God's plan. So how do we depict that in a way that's not glorifying the death, but rather the process of the human journey? And so there's a great way, I think, to do it where I don't know if you've seen, this is going to sound nerdy, but sorry, just because I'm recorded, I forget things. So
happens to me all the time.
What's the, oh, Doctor Who. Did you ever watch Doctor Who? Okay.
I watched like a really old one. They were like
Okay.
on a planet that looked like the moon, and there was like an ant people and a bee people called the Zarbi or something like that.
Okay. So there's one, this is newer, meaning in the past 15 years, where it's called Don't Blink. And there are these angels, these statues that stand there with their hands covering their faces. Anyway, if you look away, they get closer, right? And they're gonna kill you. So, but you never see them moving. So you're kind of, it's only when the character looks back and then all of a sudden they're in your face, and it is super intense. It is very, very good writing.
Yeah.
And so the intensity is in your head, but they're not actually like depicting anything. If somebody dies, they just refer to them dying as opposed to gory and all that stuff. Mm-hmm. So that's where, to answer your question, that's where I think it's going to be. It's us actually being good storytellers. There's going to be intense moments and all that stuff without the gory and without the glorifying of it, but it would still be an intense thing. Anyway, so that's my opinion.
Because yeah, you're right. I think maybe one of the many times that Hollywood crosses the line is when they almost like revel in the badness. For example, this isn't Hollywood, but this is in gaming. There was a really popular game called Diablo back in the, I think it was like the late 90s, early 2000s, somewhere in there. And I remember like there was a family member of mine that loved that game, but his mom was concerned about it. And it's like, well, why are you playing this game? Because like on the cover, it shows Diablo with like flames and stuff. And it's like a medieval game and you fight. I've never played it, but I remember him as part of his defense. He's like, well, the point of Diablo is you're trying to kill Diablo. You're not trying to help him. But and that, like, technically, yes, that's true. That's the main bad guy, but they kind of like glorified Diablo and his and like, oh, this is so cool, you know. And so it's probably not like that appropriate because you're kind of like, even though you're fighting against him, you kind of secretly like him. You like the style, the evil, whatever.
I guess if you can, I mean, Lord of the Rings, would Lord of the Rings play in, in the Millennium? I mean, it's intense. It's a fantastic story and, all these things. So I don't know. I think so. I mean, look at the Book of Mormon. The common thing, back to the correlation thing, the common thing that, is said in the church is that, if correlation existed when the Book of Mormon came out, Book of Mormon wouldn't have passed correlation because of, somebody cutting off, their head and they're still breathing, all these things.
Yeah. Well, you're right. Maybe you'll be allowed to like, because obviously there'll probably be movies and entertainment that have to do with the past, the pre-millennial world. And so maybe some things will be depicted, but like in a more appropriate way. And I guess like a very important element to this is that the people that are going to be living in the millennium.
Yes, their intent.
by definition, they will be good people, and they're not going to like really want to make bad content.
They're not trying to push the boundaries so that people can feel uncomfortable. It's more of, you know, I really do. I agree. I think just really creative storytellers that will love to see stuff from. I think they're going to be actually the best kind of media will finally exist, because I know so many creatives that have been stifled because of the evil that's in Hollywood. And also a lot of creatives that have fallen away from the truth, from the gospel, because of Hollywood, if that makes, you know, because it's so glamorous and stuff like that. So I'm excited for the day where we're all supporting each other versus a, you know, dog eat dog world. And you gotta, you know, I'm going to blacklist you, all these things, and stifling people, but rather let's develop our skills together and let's help you out. And that's what I'm doing right now. I want to like bring people that are interested and take them on shoots with me, and then so that they can learn the skill, and it's a craft, and, you know, I'm still learning. And so anyway, so that's it. It's just us, you know, helping each other develop our talents and get even better at it and better at storytelling. I think the best stories haven't been told yet. So
yeah, because maybe there's undoubtedly there's stories that are just not possible right now, whether it's because of political agendas or whether it's because a studio's like, that's kind of risky, because like we like to stay with more like what's safe or whatever. Maybe there'll be more freedom in stories being able to be produced because you don't have money or politics or anything like that influencing what gets produced and what doesn't. So,
and a lot of one of the sayings is like, if there isn't, you know, a sex scene or a violent scene in the first 25 pages, they throw it out.
Really?
Yeah. So it's more, again, that's the model that Hollywood is following, is just, you know, and you've seen it. I mean, what content, there's sometimes some good movies that come out, but otherwise most of it is not good. And because they're going the way that the world wants to go, yet the world doesn't know which way to go. So
yeah, it's going to be interesting, but I think it'll be a very exciting time for creatives. Just because there won't be pressure to do those bad things, and maybe our minds will open up even more. And just like how you can produce really beautiful buildings where there's a lot of craftsmanship put into it, maybe more of that will happen with movies, where more time can be spent on really making just a masterpiece. And I don't know, who knows, but we'll, you know, hopefully we'll find out sooner than later. But that's really cool that you're doing what you're doing right now. You're doing something on your own that other people aren't doing, and hopefully it just continues and it thrives and survives. And then it's really cool that you're still able to contract with the church and do jobs for them. About how often do you get projects from the church to work on?
It's a little, let's see. I worked on 2 things in the past 2 months, and each were about a week long. Sometimes I'll fly somewhere. I think when the church came out with the so like the friend to friend events, sometimes I just go to Utah and help out, because if I don't have anything going on here, I just go out to Utah and work a little bit. So like the friend to friend events, I help, you know, light the stage and stuff like that. I don't really shoot those. That's a little more of a broadcast thing. Anyway, so just stuff like that. So I would say every few months I'll work on something.
Yeah. So maybe it's a little bit sporadic, but also it is frequent. You can
rely on. Sometimes it's like, sometimes I wouldn't work for like a year on it, but then sometimes it'll be like 3 times in 2 months or something. So
yeah.
Now
I know that there's things that you can't say, but could you indulge us a little bit with, like, is there anything that you've seen that you can't say that's like made you excited?
Honestly, no. The things,
Bummer.
yeah, I know. Like, no. Like, there's nothing that I'm it sounds pretentious. There's really nothing, even if it's more of, yeah, there's nothing really that I know that's juicy and people would love to know. Not really. It's just more of kind of like how the temple is, where it's like, since we don't talk about it, it can become, what is it? What is it? And it's like, well, you wouldn't really, it's not like juicy to the world, or even, like, it's just more of, that was an experience that, it would give some details away about somebody personal life, maybe, you know what I'm saying? Like
Yeah.
an apostle or something like that, where it's like, it's not newsworthy, but it's not something that it's like, it could maybe spread online or something that would be taken out of context, stuff like that, where it's not.
Yeah.
So anyway, I wish there was something, but like, honestly, this is the cool thing. This is actually what I like, is that the church is, so I was in several meetings with Elder Bednar, because he was over my department that I was in. And so he would say things like, somebody would be like, oh, while we're hastening the work, and he would correct them and say, we're not hastening the work. The Lord is hastening the work, and we're trying to just keep up. And that, that was the cool thing, was it was, that's literally what it felt like. Like everything is still just the, like, oh, we got to go film this. And it's not traditional like Hollywood filmmaking, where we have all this time to plan and stuff like that. And a lot of people complain about that, say, well, they should be planning this more, blah, blah, blah. But it's like, well, this is the Lord's work. We just kind of try to do what we can within that amount of time. And so a lot of that is, that's what a lot of it is. It's just us trying to like, oh, we don't really know a whole lot ahead of time, if that makes sense. So
Yeah.
there's nothing like coming out that I know about, because it's all like way last minute, if that makes sense.
It's interesting.
So like the apostles do, they know,
Yeah.
but like more of what's coming down the road, but they know how we are as humans and members. It's like, we find that stuff out, then we tend to get distracted.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So how many general authority, well, okay, out of the Quorum of the 12 in the first presidency, how many have you personally met?
All of them, except for maybe the newest two apostles. I wasn't there when they, pretty much all of them. Elder Bednar a lot, just because he was more involved with what we were doing. President Nelson a few times before, when he was an apostle, and then after, when he became prophet. And this is an interesting subject, because it can be tempting to be like, oh, well, I talked with the apostles and stuff like that. And so a lot of people ask what it's like.
Yeah.
Here's what it's like. Do you have somebody spiritual in your life that you really look up to, but that's close to you, right? So like somebody, a stake president that you just absolutely adore and love, and they're so personable, and you can be around them all the time, and it's great. And you just really look up to them. That's the exact same feeling as it is around an apostle. Sometimes even not so around an apostle. They have, maybe a little more rough around the edges, or stern, that you wouldn't want to be around very much. So point is, I just usually just say, it's really not about the person that has that calling. You respect the calling, but the person is just the same as somebody that you really love and respect. That's just in your own ward, or, a family member or something. And,
Yeah.
And so that's really what it's like. I mean, there are people, I think we tend to put them on a really high level, just because we know, if they've met the Savior, or, something like that. But there are other people that aren't apostles,
Yeah.
So I think it's more of, if we treat each other like, everybody is an apostle, then we really actually have very sacred experiences that we weren't realizing that we would have had. I don't know if that makes sense, but I've
It
had
does.
some really great experiences, and it was usually more around somebody that, like in a third world country living in a hut, and that was more special to me than being around the apostles. It's like,
Makes sense. It does.
I don't mean to diminish the question at all, but at the same time, it's very interesting. It's actually very interesting to see the contrast between, like managers at the church and then the apostles. Like the managers are very, I don't want to be negative, but at least you're not talking to a real person almost. But then once you talk,
Oh, hello. Everybody, I'm sorry. Abrupt stop. For some reason my internet went down, but you were just talking about basically the church employees, like the mid management, and like just because we were talking the difference
well, I was
between.
talking about more the experience with the apostles,
Oh yeah, okay.
right? And so it's hard because middle management, I think I shouldn't even generalize it to middle management. I should just say certain people, right? So
Yeah,
certain people put the apostles on a pedestal so much that they then look at other people and are mean to everybody else. And then they're yes men to the apostles. If that makes
yeah,
sense.
yeah.
And I actually, that does remind me of an experience now. We were filming it was Elder Bednar, and his wife, and they were going to do like a face-to-face event or something, where it's live and, and they'll take live questions and stuff like that. I think it was actually one of the first ones, but anyway, so it was me and a bunch of priesthood priesthood guys. Like if anybody that's worked for the church, and if I just say priesthood department, we'll all laugh.
Well, I wish I was in on that, but I think I can still laugh at it.
You
I
can
get the
probably imagine. Anyway, so there's anyway, so Elder Bednar, he was, saying his thing, and they mess up all the time. And but everybody was saying, so I was the camera guy. And so everybody was saying, oh yes, good job, or whatever. Like, yes, always yes, like never correcting him or anything like that. And I wish this story wasn't about me because this can come across as pretentious. So let's imagine it's somebody else. But anyway, so there's this, I said, he was like, okay, how was that? And then everybody's, oh no, it's wonderful and wonderful, because they think, oh, it's this apostle who is perfect, who therefore the way he did it means that was what the Spirit wanted, right?
Yeah.
And so I was like, well, actually, there was this, you said this, and then you said this, which could actually, if you say it that way, it could actually mean, anyway, whatever it was, I don't remember. It was years ago, but it was just hilarious. And then he goes, okay, everybody stop. And so everybody was just staring at him, and he points at me and he's like, this is the only honest person in this room.
Awesome.
But
Awesome.
the hard thing about that was that I have to work with those guys, so it's like,
Yeah.
it's like now they're all like Joe, like he's the one. But I was like, can we just all be normal? Can we just be normal and then just talk and then like get feedback? And, this is what a council is, as opposed to, oh, no, yes. Like everything you do is perfect.
It's called being real.
Exactly.
And so
Yeah.
I think you can explain that phenomena in two ways. One, as far as like the yes men go, one is you probably do have genuine people that are just like nervous, and they just like, they genuinely think, you don't correct the apostles.
Yeah.
But then you have the other toxic portion where they do it because they're trying to advance in their career, or they want to have status, or they want to like appear a certain way. So You probably
That's
have the two
true.
groups. Before we started this this recording back up, after my internet crashed, me and Joe were actually talking about the military, because he had served in the military, went to the same boot camp. And in boot camp, okay, on my first night, we got to the reception battalion, and everybody was shocked and stunned, because like that's just what happens. You get off the bus and you're like, oh my gosh, this was probably a mistake. And we got there at night, and then we like went into the barracks, and there were like other recruits that were already there, and there was like one that was like kind of put in charge of the barracks.
Oh, I remember that.
And he would act like the drill sergeants did. Like, one of the rules was to not look the drill sergeants in the eyes.
Yeah.
That was actually only in the reception battalion. Once I got to my basic training unit, it wasn't like that. But this fool was, he came to my bunk, and he like asked me a question, and I like looked him in the eyes as I was like responding like normal people do. Yeah. He's like, why are you looking at me in the eyes? And I'm like, oh, sorry. Cause I didn't know like
who he was.
I didn't know I knew he was one of us, but I didn't know if there were like rules to where I'm just supposed to treat him like a drill sergeant. Yeah. Which, the next day and following days, I was like, oh, who do you think you were? And so yeah, it's that kind of behavior where you like you're in lockstep, and you don't you're not real, and you assume authority that you don't really have. That's
exactly right.
Or whatever. I
think that's the fulfillment of the scripture. You give any sort of like even power that they think they have, but they don't even have, and they'll just take it. I just laugh. I think it's funny.
It's like this isn't the best show, but the Office, it's like Dwight Schrute. He was always, any little bit of power, he took advantage of it and ran with it.
I think the Saturday person that's going to be working is Jim.
The sad thing about a lot of those shows like The Office, Parks and Rec, Benjamin, I'm making a video. Sorry, it's my son. Is that okay? I really like those shows. I don't like them for their sex humor, potty humor, worldly humor, but there's so much witty humor, like good thought out humor that is actually good. And that's what sucks, is that you watch stuff from Hollywood and you see a lot of the good stuff. There is a lot of good stuff, but they always have to mix it in with the bad.
I know.
And it's frustrating.
For these agendas.
Yeah. So hopefully in the Millennium, we can get like a version of The Office that's without the bad stuff, just like the really good, genuinely funny humor that doesn't have to resort to potty humor or sex humor or whatever, or drugs or things like that. Well, anyway, I think we'll wrap it up here. Joe, thanks for coming on. I wanted to talk to you for many different reasons, but this was like really good conversation, and you gave us a little bit of a glimpse into your world. And I know that we all wish you success with Bottlesodes. Everybody, if you're able to, please do it. This is something that you can do, either help with content or help with finance or whatever, or just simply get the service for your kids, a good alternative to YouTube kids TV or whatever it is. If you guys haven't already, please make sure to subscribe, like this video if you liked it, leave your thoughts and opinions down in the comments below. If you'd like to get in contact with Joe, I guess you could email me, or are you just gonna like check comments after this? And
yeah, I can check comments. I can even give my email, but I'll just check. So that's fine. I have a business email, so it would be the same as yours. In the sense of,
maybe I'll just get that from you, and then I'll put it down in the description so you guys can just directly email him. Also, make sure to share it with anyone that would find this interesting and useful, and I'll talk to you guys later.